women. White women are only a part of the women WBE group for that count.
That clarity is important, and
Okay.
it's important. So thank you for that. The bell has rung, so I'll have to come back on the next round.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was following in my office the line of questioning for Councilman O on foreign travel, and I like you, and I'm not going to get into all my opinion on some of this foreign travel, but because I never want to have conflict with you. You're always been a decent witness and a decent person. The question I have is that as a result of his colloquy with you, you said that those folks that you went and visited with in Tel Aviv and in London were now coming here to kick the tires. Why didn't we just invite him here to kick the tires in the first place? Save the cost of us going there to ask them to come to kick the tires and invite twice as many companies.
It's a fair question, and I think the simple answer is that people the world over need to look at you in the eye, and they need to hear your pitch. So I think for them, the idea of being in, let's use the case of Israel in particular. This is a country that has got, it has an enormous startup engine. They're forming companies every 3 minutes, but they have no market. So they have to look to Europe and North America generally as markets. So when they think about North America, without any further, interference from any of us, they think about New York. Or perhaps they think about the East Coast, they generally think about New York. And so we have to make that pitch to them, and they need that pitch to be done in person. I think that's at the bottom of it.
So conferencing and Skype don't work?
It's not as good. They're helpful. They're helpful particularly on the next level, when you finally meet somebody and you sort of get a sense of them and there's a bit of a trust developing. Next time, Skype's great. But I think as a first-time thing, I think there's an impersonal and an abstract quality to it that just doesn't register.
But again, not to beat the dead horse, but they could come and look in your eye here too. And
I'm sorry,
they could come and look into your eyes here. My point is that I think you avoid the criticism that ultimately comes with trips to London and Tel Aviv and Rome. You avoid some of that criticism, you avoid that cost, and you still accomplish your goal because you're bringing the same folks that you just talked to there, here, and probably could give them more attention and more resources to get them where we want them to be.
I would say you're right if you could truly get them here with a different method. I'm not persuaded you can.
Let me look at a moment for the issue of domestic kind of trips.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a tendency recently, because I had to do some work, to drive the Northeast extension of the Turnpike more times than I would have liked to, based on that drive and the traffic. And I happen to see on either sides of that Northeast extension large warehousing facilities, distribution facilities, transportation facilities. And I think about the cohort of the 26% poverty rate folks we have in the city. While we aspire to have everyone college educated and able to take a high-tech med or ed job, the fact of the matter is we're still going to have to employ folks who maybe in their lifetime will never get to that level and need to drive a truck and work in a warehouse and work in a recycling plant and work in those kinds of concrete manufacturing. What do we do up there? I mean, do we go up there and we try to get the 20 or 50 or a subsidiary of one of those companies down to our industrial part of the Navy Yard or industrial part of North Philadelphia districts or on the riverfront? I mean, I do appreciate the high tech and eds and meds, but I need truck drivers and warehousemen and people making $15 to $20 an hour or more with health care and pension.
First of all, you're absolutely right about the need for those jobs, and there are other areas where I think we have a better chance at getting them, and I'll come back to that in a minute. To answer you got a couple of questions in there. One of them is, do we go up and talk to those folks? And the answer is no, generally we do not. Why? Because we won't win. And we won't win the battle of cheap land, cheap building next to some highway out of town. But
okay, I want to come back to that for a minute.
Okay, it's the same thing it's often the same thing with back offices of major corporations. And I've known developers over the years, in fact, all the developers we all know, who have attempted that as well with very low success rates. But there are instances in which it could be distribution. We're going to try to make it more manufacturing, where those things can sensibly be brought into the city. And when that happens, we push really hard on it. I know you're aware, it didn't happen because of, I guess, state process at this point, but the possibility of a new liquor distribution center in Philadelphia. Now, we did everything we could to make that work and available, but in the end, the state never ran its process, so there was never a decision made.
But I will give you an example, though. For
Go ahead.
example, PIDC did terrific work with AC Linen down in Southwest Philly.
AC's a great story.
And those guys.
That was the next one I was gonna bring
And
up.
those opportunities, I think we need to concentrate as much or more on them as we do on, a high-tech firm from Tel Aviv. Because we have to get those folks to work. The folks that are now, the 170 or so jobs created by AC Linen opening in June, all those 170 people, I would be safe to say, are currently unemployed today.
Probably, and given their profile of who they hire, I think
I
absolutely.
mean, they hire ex-offenders.
They find ex-offenders,
they're
they're great.
I just really would love to, and I think you can go up the Turnpike, out to Lancaster, up to Allentown, and talk to those folks and say, what is it that you want? What is it that you need? What do we have to provide? Is it free land? Is it certain kinds of tax breaks? But unless we have that conversation with them, I don't think we'll ever win it. And the only other segment of the economy I would talk about, and Philadelphia is perfect for it, are breweries. I mean, there are breweries all over the state that I'm sure could do something here in Philadelphia to manufacture and distribute their beer much closer to their customer than from the other side of the state.
Actually, we're talking to one right now, and actually the source is interesting, less so from other parts of the state, and actually from the West Coast, because they need East Coast sites. We came close on one from Denver 2 years ago. They couldn't get their head wrapped around Philadelphia as a beer center.
What?
Listen, I know. That was
What?
2 years ago. Now, well,
gotta be-
look, they wound up, just to finish the story, they wound up in Asheville. It sort of they thought it fit their cultural scene a little better, and we thought, are you crazy? We're in the middle of the most massive distribution complex you could come up with. Now we're on to another one. Looks like there's some possibility, another West Coast firm. I think California, but I'm not sure. California? Thank you.
We'll get around.
Yeah. So we're going to get another beer operation in this town.
Thank you, Councilman. They should have been around when the old 700 level of the vet, right? Talk about beer.
Maybe it wasn't their kind of beer drinker. I don't know.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Heaney.
Thank you, Council President. And I believe I know who you're referring to. The city at one point, just as a point of information, had 58 breweries.
Yeah.
Right, at one point. And, people don't realize it, but we are certainly a beer town. And with the, I'm going to say, resurgence or renaissance of the microbrewery, it is absolutely taken off. And, we're prepared for it, and I hope, in the conversations with that cross-country 2,500-mile travel, that they can get here soon because, we welcome them. Trust me, we do. And speaking of manufacturing, that is the point I want to make here. I want to thank you, and I have to thank the mayor for his creation of the Manufacturer Task Force. You as the chair, and every CEO and manufacturer that participated, because the good news was announced that there is going to be a creation of a Office of Manufacturing and Industry, and it is going to sit where?
In the Commerce
In
Department.
the Commerce Department. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. I think that if we're going to be serious about, and by the way, you shouldn't be so humble because I didn't chair it, I co-chaired it with you and with 2 other folks from the private sector. If we're going to be serious about trying to figure out how to attract more manufacturing in the city, we're going to have to put in, more than a usual effort. It's going to take a more extraordinary effort to do that. Because there's a lot of issues, as you know, you sat there next to me the whole time. There are issues of workforce readiness, there's issues of dollars, there's issues of connection to inexpensive energy, and we have to have a focus. It has to be, and somebody besides me has to take the responsibility to run that day in, day out. So that's what we're going to do. We thought that, and John Grady and I had a very nice conversation about it, and there was no hesitation on anybody's part that Mike was the right guy for this, Mike Cooper.
Mike Cooper.
And that he could continue to do a lot of the cross-coordination that he does at PIDC now, so that we continue to move this whole effort forward together.
And you know, I was very pleased to hear that announcement, and even more so that, that there's a commitment, because now, somebody has, there was an offer and an acceptance for somebody to focus in on, in my opinion, the growth of putting people to work, growth of putting Philadelphians to work, where we have the opportunity to train them. And I know we have...
And good jobs.
Great jobs. And they're simple jobs, and some are a little more complicated, but they're job opportunities for all Philadelphians. And, we want to recruit right from our school district, and we'll talk about that, when our the school district comes here in preparation of pipeline, or education directly into the workforce that reflects Philadelphia. And, with that being said, the Controller's Office last week, released a report on the value or thereof the Keystone Opportunity Zones in Philadelphia. And as you are aware of, with the resurgence or renaissance of manufacturing in Philadelphia, it's a priority of mine, a lot of members of council, yourself, and the mayor's office. But according to the report, the manufacturing was one of the few sectors that provided reasonable return on the investment, which would lead me to believe that that is one area that we can make that significant investment to try to bring manufacturing jobs back to Philly, and it would be a tremendous, and I mean tremendous, benefit to the city. So I was wondering if you had a time to analyze that Controller's report and see if you had any opinions on his findings, because I think there is, as we focus narrowly on it, we should take a look at that and see how we can maximize, the growth.
Mm-hmm. We did take, in fact, we had provided the Controller's Office with a lot of baseline information, and we're not sure it came out in that report the way that we delivered it to them. But I don't want to get into a kind of tit for tat about the report here. I think the baseline for us is that Keystone Opportunity Zones are a tool that the state provides us. We think they're worth something. They tend to be almost always, on land that is undeveloped. One of the, as you know, one of the key issues in modern manufacturing is that they take up a lot of land. They're horizontal operations, they're not vertical operations. And so the kind of there's a whole mix of properties in KOZ, but a lot of them have some industrial capacity. So it's a tool that we want to retain and, frankly, take advantage of. And I think its ability to play in the manufacturing world is probably the strongest of all those sectors.
And I do hope that we continue to have that kind of support. It goes in line with the preservation of our existing industrial land and furthering opportunities, for industrial development. And they are large and have a big footprint, and are also subject to, other regulatory issues, that we have to continue to
They
deal
have
with.
stormwater issues,
but
there's all kinds of
by
stuff.
providing these opportunities, all right, maybe, the bridge or gap to attract somebody into coming, to coming here.
I think, I want to take advantage of every tool we have at our disposal,
And we
particularly
do.
around this.
And people don't realize that we are employing over 23,000 Philadelphians. Well, I would say, so 23,000 jobs in Philadelphia here, right, in the manufacturing sector. It could be that little corner store where it looks like a corner store and there's 38 people in there making widgets, or something like that. I've gone to, toured on several of them, that were simulation programs and computer networking calculations to sorting bins, where 13 different languages are being spoken. So it's, quite the diverse workforce. So
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. We need to take advantage of all the tools that we have, and
Agree.
I'm glad that we're all collaboratively working together on it. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councilman Heenan. I would add to your comments regarding this new task force and be curious to know what the jobs are now, where they are, and as a result of this new initiative, what it looks like, what's the yield of this new initiative a year from now, just so that we can begin to see the trends which support and justify, if you
Fair
will,
request.
why creating this new task force really mattered.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to get to a couple of my questions, and then Councilman O, you're up next. We can never beat the horse too long when it comes to MBE, WBE. In this instance, I'm curious about DBE. What type of outreach strategies or initiatives does the department undertake to capture interest in among DBEs?
So disadvantaged businesses include minority and women-owned businesses.
Separate from disabled, those who have
Yes.
disabilities?
Yes, disadvantage is separate from disabled. That's a completely different category. The disadvantaged businesses are those that are certified by the federal government that are economically and socially disadvantaged.
Okay,
So while they call them disadvantaged, we call them M&W.
I see.
BEs.
Clarity is important.
Yes.
Okay. And so then let's talk about the disabled community.
Okay, so the disabled community has very limited support from the Office of Economic Opportunity. When we discontinued our certification program in 2010, I believe there were about 8 companies
Is that right?
that have been certified as disabled.
Okay.
We do not have any other certifying agencies at this point that certify disabled-owned businesses.
How well is Philadelphia doing with regards to other similarly situated municipalities around MBE, WBE activity and progress?
So I'm going to answer based on the conversations that I have with eConsult,
Okay.
who is our consultant on the disparity study. And their feedback, being familiar with a number of the largest municipalities around the country and their disparity efforts, have indicated that the City of Philadelphia is advanced in our programs, are proactive in what we've done thus far. They make recommendations to us that we have implemented throughout the years. Now,
Site 2.
as an example, looking at the outreach and the capacity
Okay.
building. So in 2011, the Office of Economic Opportunity initiated a capacity building program for minority and women contractors. That program was a 6-month program every other week. There was a graduation of 37 companies that we will track this year to see where are you now versus where were you 2 years ago. That was 2011-12. In 2013, we supported Skanska,
Yes.
which is a major international contractor, and their partnership with the Minority Supplier Development Council and Temple University to run a capacity building program for minority and women contractors. This year, 2014, we host with Turner Construction their program management program. It's being hosted by the Commerce Department and the Office of Economic Opportunity every Thursday evening. And it's an 8-week program where they will graduate from that program with skills in program management. The important thing about each of these different projects is not only does it provide more of a business acumen for small businesses, but it also provides an opportunity to connect with some of the major contractors in the city and to build relationships
Yes.
that ultimately allows them to expand their business as
Sure.
subcontractors and hopefully one day as a prime.
Sure. Councilman O, You're up next, and then I'd like to just give a heads up, the PIDC would like to invite them to the table following Councilman O.
All right,
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. So, eConsult has done a report on the status of Philadelphia's employment outlook. And are you familiar with their report?
Is this the one that was in conjunction with the Center City District report?
Yes.
Yeah, I am familiar with it, at least somewhat familiar with it, yeah.
Okay, so in that report, which was brought up in an earlier conversation at one of our hearings,
Yes.
that report indicates or predicts that the city of Philadelphia would lose 75,000 jobs by 2021 if we do not do something different. So you're familiar with that report?
Yeah, except if I could offer a clarification on that, because I
Okay.
don't actually, it's a little subtle how they put it, but I actually thought you might ask this question, so I talked to Steve Mullen yesterday about it.
That's why we like you.
And so he and I think both are agreeing that what it actually says, and it is nuanced, I'll give you that, it says the city lost 75,000 jobs over some extended period of time going back decades.
Yes.
And then it said, if that were to happen again, it would have significant economic consequences, true, and it further advocated that changing of the tax structure in the city could help minimize that trend if it happened. And I think the emphasis is on if this happened. So I think they pose this thing as a hypothetical rather than a prediction.
Okay, that's not how I read the report,
Yeah.
but you're talking...
I'm happy to go over with you again, because
No,
he and
no.
I went over and I thought, I'm not
Yeah.
sure that this is predicting 75,000 job loss.
Yeah, well, I will accept what you're saying as
Well,
a
let's look at it together.
clarification. Yeah, so, but I read the report, and I think it's been widely distributed, it's good news for me if it's not so, because it corresponds to a $151 million reduction of the wage taxes alone in what the city receives. But there was a loss of 219,000 jobs between 1970 and 2010. So there was a steady reduction in jobs. And from a reading of that report, it would indicate that the jobs that are predicted to be lost are primarily entry-level and low-wage jobs. And so in relation to this discussion about the opportunities and trying to find employment for folks, that is important because, that is an area of struggle, employing neighborhood folks, where with those jobs decline, the folks who don't have a college degree, who may have literacy issues or a criminal record, are really challenged to get themselves back into a system, and, it will be a loss of support for city services. So I'm just kind of curious, did anyone ever do a study of like a comparison of 2014 versus 1964 total revenues of the city in comparable dollars versus tax burden on individual citizens?
If somebody has done it, I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, I would, very much like to explore that. Perhaps, if you're not going to do it, I'd be happy to do it, but...
It's not exactly a capacity we have, I would say, but
Yeah, no. So the reason I'm bringing up in light of the, MWBED questions are that some of the planning around the employment process would focus on, really engaging more entrepreneurism and ensuring the success of these businesses. Many of them hire, for example, companies, may hire more persons with disabilities, if we are promoting that, if we are, pursuing those. So, I'm just bringing it up for conversation's sake. I don't need an answer today, but the strategy I'm very interested in how you address that issue, and I will look at that report again, and I will talk to the folks over at eConsult to get a clear interpretation myself about
Yeah.
what it is.
And then I'm happy
saying.
to sort of circle back to you and
Yes.
make sure that we're of a similar point of view about what this thing says.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can we invite PIDC to the table, please?